Everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host, John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about To Catch a Thief and its brand new Paramount 4K Steelbook that just came out. But before we get into that 4K Blu-ray review, I always like to give a quick film review, and today is no different. So if you don't want to know anything about To Catch a Thief and you're just here for that 4K Blu-ray review, you guys can skip ahead right now. So back in 1955, Alfred Hitchcock delivered to us another one of his classics, that film being To Catch a Thief, starring Cary Grant and Grace Kelly. This would be the last film that Alfred Hitchcock ever worked with Grace Kelly on. He would work obviously more with Cary Grant on North by Northwest, which is probably their most famous team up, even though in this movie Cary Grant plays a very similar character to his character in North by Northwest, where it's a character who suffers from mistaken identity and has to prove that it's not actually him that's doing all of this. So very similar. I do think that North by Northwest is the better of these two films, but this is also the first time I had ever seen To Catch a Thief. I don't know why. It just always kind of flew by me, but when I saw the 4K Steelbook was at such a low price, I'm like, this is it. Finally got to do it, and I'm sure glad I did, because this movie, it's a blast. It's just another great Alfred Hitchcock film set in the French Riviera, so it's beautiful to look at. Grace Kelly and Cary Grant clearly have great chemistry, and apparently Alfred Hitchcock really liked to work with these two actors. They did a lot of the on-location filming in the actual French Riviera. They filmed half of it apparently in the Paramount lot, and I do think that those scenes are very noticeable when you watch the film back. You know, anytime they're in the water, like clearly that's a pool on a soundstage. It makes sense. It's a 72-year-old movie. You can forgive it for that, but anytime they're actually in the French Riviera, my God, it looks absolutely stunning to film at a location like this. And I'm not somebody who's really into traveling, but my wife's been there and she said it's also very beautiful. So it's pretty cool that they did this. And the movie, why does it take place in the French Riviera? Well, Cary Grant's character, he's a retired thief, which is just absolutely insane to me that you could be a thief and just retire to the French Riviera. Like, you know, you put in this hard life of work. You stole that life. My God. And I get it. He tries to justify it. Like, I only stole from people, you know, who wouldn't notice it was missing, who, you know, who could deserve to take the loss. And I get that. Listen, I hate billionaires too. Fuck them. You know, there's enough money to go around for everybody. They don't need to have everything. But to act like you're some kind of high-class member of society, I don't know. It's a little much for me. You know, him and, you know, his fellow group of thieves, it sounds like, you know, they've kind of created nice lives for themselves, even though they're like, we're not doing that anymore. And unfortunately for him, you know, he gets to live this great life, I guess, you know, not unfortunate, but there is a copycat thief out there who is trying to mimic exactly his style of thief. So I guess, you know, you could just able to do that. Like it's a murderer, you know, they have a certain style to them, a certain calling card. So they come to investigate him. He gets out of there because, you know, I guess he's always very suspicious of the police. So he just gets out of there and he needs like an alibi. And then he realizes, okay, no one's going to ever believe me. So what do I have to do? I'm going to have to catch this thief myself. That's what it's about. I'm going to have to figure out who this is. And since this person knows me so well, nobody knows me better than me. So I will just set a trap for them. I'll be there waiting the next time they're going to rob someplace, and that's exactly what he's going to do. So that's what sets him on the journey for the rest of the movie, is him trying to find out who the true thief is. Along the way, he meets Grace Kelly's character and her mother. Her mother is great in this movie as well. Very spunky woman. But of course, Grace Kelly and Cary Grant they fall for each other, start a great, you know, they start this big romance. You know, of course, this is the 1950s. The code is still in place. Alfred Hitchcock knows everything there is about the code. So he knows how to work his magic to make sure he could put certain things in his films. You know, basically get the point across, you know, for the intelligent people out there. Like, oh, they're just kissing. No, they're banging, because that's why the fireworks are going off. And that's why that scene is also very famous. It's very famous for getting around the code. It has been spoofed and satired numerous times. Just look at Austin Powers again. I always bring up Austin Powers. Austin Powers, not just spoofing the 1960s and 1970s James Bond film, also was kind of spoofing like North by Northwest and To Catch a Thief, clearly, when you're watching this film. This was a very famous scene, first time I had ever saw it, but I had heard about this scene. This is how you had to express this stuff in the 1950s. You know, people were just very prude. It was of the time. They didn't want certain things on their screen. You know, you had to follow this code. Thankfully, that fell off in the 1960s, but Alfred Hitchcock was the king of this, getting around this kind of stuff, and the movie itself was very risque for the time, but it got around the code. And you know what? You're glad, because you wouldn't have this great romance, this hot fling going on in this movie if you couldn't, get around that in certain ways. And it all works out so well. The movie itself was also shot in VistaVision, something we talked about with The Brutalist when it came out last year. That movie was shot in VistaVision because most of the movie takes place in the 1950s, so they wanted to pay homage to great 1950s technology. VistaVision of the time is basically the IMAX of the time. So that was the big new widescreen format to separate itself from television, to get asses in seats, essentially, just like we're talking about now with IMAX and Dolby theaters. You got to separate yourself from what the home theaters are of the time. So this was the big selling point. It's going to look beautiful on the big screen. Things are going to look sharper. It's supposed to be this new big technology, and it works because the technology was so good at the time. It actually lends itself great to the 4K Blu-ray format here in 2025. The movie looks stunning. Obviously, he would do, I think, 5 films with VistaVision. This was the first of them. And you can clearly see a lot of the aspects that he would use in future films. Like, just think about the green lighting in this movie. That's something I always think of Vertigo with. Again, this is the first time I saw To Catch a Thief, so he started that here, but I always think of Vertigo, like running around on the roofs. Like, all that stuff is Vertigo to me, but he does it so well in this movie as well. The production design is incredible. The costumes are great. The final act, like the last scene, like that is such a colorful, beautiful looking scene. It's filled with tension. Of course, we're going to get the big reveal of who the actual thief is. Is it a little bit believable in the sense of the way, like, just the way she confesses like that, like he's gonna drop her? It's a little bit unbelievable, but of course, again, it is of the time. I wouldn't say that To Catch a Thief is one of my top 5 favorite Alfred Hitchcock films, but it's definitely one that's gonna go on my permanent Alfred Hitchcock rotation. This is another one I'll probably watch in like another 2 or 3 years and probably get a kick out of again. It was an absolute blast. I enjoyed myself. Is it perfect? No, but it's still really, really good. And if you're an Alfred Hitchcock fan and you're like myself and you've never seen To Catch a Thief, I can highly recommend this one. Maybe you want to check out this 4K Steelbook that we're going to talk about right now.
Come down, Robbie, or we shall be forced to shoot.
And here it is, To Catch a Thief on 4K Steelbook. And I don't know what happened. I pre-ordered this from Amazon because it was $14. It must have been a mistake because I think it's $25 again. I think it's been $25 since that day. And I usually don't like to blind buy things, but I thought, it's Alfred Hitchcock. It's Grace Kelly. It's Cary Grant. Of course, I'm going to probably like this movie. It's worth the blind buy, especially on 4K Steelbook. Even if it doesn't turn out to be great, it's $14. That's a pretty good price for a 4K Blu-ray to take a risk on. Once we get closer to 20, I'm like, maybe not, but $14? Not bad. The Steelbook itself, it's a little plain Jane, but I do like the colors on it. When you come inside, it is a 1-disc set. It did come with a digital code, so that'll be the digital code giveaway. No pack-in Blu-ray or anything like that, so I had nothing to compare this to. And since this is the first time I've ever seen the film, it's hard for me to say for sure what this film is actually supposed to look like. That's where you guys come in. I'm sure there's people who've been watching this movie since like the 70s or 80s who know like what the actual film is supposed to look like. For me, I thought it looked great. As far as the extras go, because everything is on that 1 disc, there are plenty of them. Maybe not the longest extras, but there are so many great featurettes. There's a casting featurettes, a making of featurette. There's one looking at the code of the time, looking back on Alfred Hitchcock, a long list of bonus features. And like I've said in plenty of my other reviews, I love bonus features. I'm a big extras junkie. I just love that stuff. I finished the movie and I just dove into all that. It makes you appreciate the movie even more. And you'll also learn a lot about the movie. And it's really about the appreciation though. It really does make the movie better in my opinion. When you learn about how they made the movie, I get not everybody's into finding out how the mustard is made. I get that. It's the same thing like we were talking about with wrestling and how that new Unreal show's out. It's like, do you need to pull the curtain back that much? Not everybody's into that. I'm very much into that when it comes to filmmaking, so I love the bonus features, and you get plenty of them on here. I'm sure that they're all previously released bonus features, but they're all new to me. I had a blast checking them out. As far as the audio goes, it is a Dolby True HD 5.1, and because it's Dolby True HD 5.1, I imagine that's the exact same audio track from the previous release. That's something that Paramount does. They usually just take the previously released audio track and port it over. If you were to compare this to North by Northwest that Warner Brothers did on 4K Blu-ray, they gave us a new Dolby Atmos track while also giving us the original audio. This is a remix track that is just being ported over. That's the difference between Paramount and Warner Brothers. So unfortunately, the audio is good, but it's not great audio like what what Warner Brothers is doing with some of their classic 1950s films. It is still very good. You don't have to worry about, turning the volume up and down. No pops or clicks. Everything comes in crisp and clear. It's still very good. It's just, you can imagine like what it could have been. Of course, people probably want the original audio back anyway. Those people, unfortunately, won't get to experience that on this disc. Now, when you go to the visuals, you got Dolby Vision and you got HDR10, and I thought it looked phenomenal. Is it a perfect 4K Blu-ray release? Again, like when you're comparing it to like Warner Brothers releases like The Searchers and North by Northwest all the time, no, it doesn't quite hit those levels, but it gets pretty close, and this is one of the better Paramount releases when it comes to visuals. Kind of similar to Small Soldiers that we talked about last week. There are like two sides to Paramount. Sometimes Paramount just gives us nothing. Like, it's like, is that really a visual upgrade? It just looks a little muddy and mushy. And then they give us something like this that looks phenomenal on 4K Blu-ray. Again, shot on VistaVision of the time. The colors are just beautiful. They're very, very saturated. It looks stunning, especially in the third act when they're at that party. A very colorful scene. It's really going to make good use of the 4K Blu-ray format. The HDR is doing its work as well. I absolutely love the visuals on here. They're like almost, I would say they're about 8.5, 9 out of 10 visuals. Not quite hitting a 10 out of 10, but man, for $14, and this is the only real big upgrade for somebody like me who's never seen the film before, I feel like I stole this one. I can knock Paramount if it's like, I can knock Paramount all I want, but they actually did a very good job when it comes to the visuals on this. Now, again, I'm sure people have the previous release of To Catch a Thief, and I can't compare it to that, so I don't know for sure if this is the world's biggest upgrade or not. But if you did get this one for like $14, and let's say the Steelbook drops it down again to like $14, $15, I absolutely think it's worth that price. I had a great time watching it. Again, it's a first time watch for me, so I might be coming at this a little bit different than other people, and especially in comparison to some of my other 4K Blu-ray reviews. I usually like to see the film first before I do a 4K Blu-ray review. I don't know how many blind buys I've actually done here on the channel, but it does kind of hurt because I can't compare it to the previous release, especially if they don't put the Blu-ray in here. But for my experience, being a first-time watcher of this film and, getting this 4K Steelbook, I'm pretty damn happy. And if I'm going to give this one a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one a pretty solid 8.5 out of 10. Again, the mileage may vary. Do you have that previous release? Do you like To Catch a Thief? It's really all going to come down to you, but that's my general feelings on it. I do think it's worth it at a certain price. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure you like it, make sure you share it, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That really helps us out. We also have channel memberships, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel, like Ben Rondo, John Doe Juggalo, and Harvey Scott, you can do that. You can even bump it up to the director's tier, like Stone Gas Man, Uncle V, Kevin Kruger, Nicholas Head, and Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, or you can even bump it up to the channel bankroll member like Mr. Smelly Potato. But of course, guys, if you got no money to throw my way, I don't mind. I just hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.